Look at
They
me.
left him chained on the ice
You
to
cannot
die,
stay
but a
chained here while they
princess found
destroy
him and
everything we
saved him.
built.
It whispered through broken ice towers and howled across frozen valleys as if the land itself was alive and angry. On this endless ice, a man was dragged. His boots were gone. His hands were bound in iron chains carved with strange symbols. Each symbol glowed faint blue, burning cold into his skin. Every step tore pain through his body, but he made no sound. He had learned long ago that begging only pleased those who wanted him broken. The guards did not speak his name. They no longer remembered it. To them, he was only the traitor. They hauled him to the center of the ice field, where an ancient stone altar rose from the frozen ground. Frost covered its surface like sharp teeth. This was a place of old judgment, used when the crown wanted no witnesses and no mercy. The wind cut deeper here. Snow gathered around his legs, already trying to claim him. "This is far enough," one guard said. The others nodded. They chained him to the altar, wrapping the iron tight around his chest and arms. The runes flared brighter, drinking in his strength. His breath came slow and white. His heart beat hard, but even that was beginning to ache with cold. The captain stepped closer. "By order of the crown," he said, voice flat, "you are sentenced to die by ice." The man lifted his head. His face was bruised, his hair dark and frozen with blood, but his eyes were still clear. Not afraid, not angry, only tired. "I did not betray the kingdom," he said quietly. The captain looked away. "Your words no longer matter." They turned and left him there. No blade. No final strike. Only time, cold, and silence. The ice accepted him. High above the frozen lands, inside the stone walls of Skeldreth Palace, Princess Eloin stood at the window. She watched snow fall like ash from the sky. The palace was warm, but she felt cold. Eloin had been born into winter. From her first breath, the kingdom had told her who she was meant to be: obedient, calm, unshaken. A future queen shaped by duty, not desire. Yet tonight something felt wrong. Her chest felt tight, as if unseen fingers pressed against her heart. A strange pull tugged at her, drawing her attention north, beyond the palace walls, beyond safety. She placed her hand on the glass. "I feel it again," she whispered. Behind her, the royal seer lowered her head. "The ice stirs," the woman said. "Old forces move when fate changes." Eloin turned. "What does that mean?" The seer hesitated. "It means," she said carefully, "that something the crown tried to bury has not died." Eloin's breath caught. She had grown up on stories of traitors and enemies, of justice and punishment, but deep inside she had always felt the stories were missing pieces, truths left unspoken. "Where?" Eloin asked. The seer met her gaze. "The ice field," she said, "the place of no return." Eloin did not wait for permission. She pulled on her cloak and left the chamber. The storm was already rising when Eloin crossed the outer gates. Snow lashed her face. The wind fought her every step, as if warning her to turn back. No guards followed. No servants dared question her. She rode alone. The further she traveled, the heavier the silence became. The land grew empty, stripped of trees and life. Only ice and broken stone remained. Then she saw it, a dark shape against white. At first she thought it was only rock. Then it moved. Eloin dismounted and ran, her boots slipping across ice. The closer she came, the clearer it became. A man chained to an altar, covered in frost, barely breathing. Her heart stopped. "No," she whispered. She knelt beside him. His skin was cold, far too cold for someone still alive. The chains glowed brighter as she touched them, sending a sharp chill through her fingers. The man's eyes opened. They were a deep gray, like a winter sky before a storm. For a long moment they simply stared at each other. He thought she was a dream. She thought he was already dead. "You shouldn't be here," he said weakly. Eloin swallowed. "Neither should you." She tried to pull the chains, but they did not move. The runes burned brighter, reacting to her touch. The ground beneath them trembled. A thin crack split the ice. Eloin froze. The man's eyes widened, not with fear but with shock. It responds to you, he whispered. What does? She asked. The ice. The crack spread, glowing faint silver beneath the surface. The wind screamed louder, circling them like a living thing. Aloan backed away, heart racing. What have they done to you? She asked. He closed his eyes. They erased me, he said, and they left me to disappear. Aloan looked at the chains again. At the runes meant to drain hope, strength, and memory, she stood. I will not leave you here, she said. His eyes snapped open. You must. If I don't, he warned, the crown will hunt you. She met his gaze, unshaken. Then let them. She pulled a small blade from her cloak, not to cut the chains, but her own palm. Blood fell onto the ice. The ground shook. The runes screamed with light. The altar cracked. The ice field answered her call. Far away, deep within the palace, ancient bells began to ring, bells that had not sounded in 100 years. And in the frozen north, the man bound to die felt warmth for the first time since his sentence. Not from fire, but from hope. The ice did not break all at once. It groaned, cracked, and shifted like something waking from deep sleep. Princess Aloan stood frozen in fear as silver light spread beneath her feet. The wind howled louder, circling her and the chained man like a warning. She fell back onto the snow. The man cried out, not in pain but in alarm. Stop, he said, pulling against the chains. If the ice fully breaks, it will swallow us both. Aloan pressed her palms against the frozen ground. Her breath came fast. She did not understand what she had done, only that the land had answered her blood. Slowly the trembling stopped. The crack sealed itself. The wind faded to a low whisper. Silence returned. Aloan looked at the man again. His chest rose and fell, weak but steady. Frost still covered his lashes, but there was something new in his eyes. Not fear, wonder. You should not have come, he said quietly. She pushed herself to her knees. I could not ignore it. Ignore what? She hesitated. The pull, the feeling that someone was being erased. His jaw tightened. They were thorough, he said. The crown does not like unfinished work. Aloan reached for the chains again, more carefully this time. The runes glowed, but they did not burn her now. Instead, they pulsed like a heartbeat. What is your name? She asked. He looked away. It no longer matters. It matters to me, she said. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, like a confession pulled from deep ice, the word escaped him. Kale. Aloan repeated it softly. Kale. The name seemed to settle into the air, steadying it. Moving him was not easy. Kale was weak from cold and hunger, his body stiff and uncooperative. The chains limited every movement. Aloan used her cloak to shield him from the wind and wrapped the loose end around his shoulders. He noticed. You should leave me, he said again. Before they realize I am still alive. They already know, she replied. He studied her face. You are not afraid. I am, she said honestly, but fear does not decide everything. Together, slowly, they made their way toward an abandoned watchtower near the edge of the ice field. It was old and broken, forgotten by the kingdom, much like Kale. Inside, the stone walls blocked the worst of the wind. Aloan lit a small fire. Kale watched the flames carefully as if they might betray him. Fire hurts me now, he said. Aloan frowned. Why? The curse, he replied. It turns warmth into pain, kindness into punishment. Her hands tightened around the fire tool. Who did this to you? The crown, he said simply, with the blessing of the winter spirits. She looked at him sharply. Why? His voice lowered. Because I refused an order. What order? He met her gaze. To kill your mother. The words struck like ice. Aloan staggered back, the fire tool slipping from her hand. My mother died of illness, she whispered. That is the story, Kale said, not the truth. The silence that followed was heavy and sharp. Aloan sank onto the stone floor. Her thoughts raced, colliding with memories, old doubts, things she had never dared question. You were her guard, she said slowly. He nodded. Her oath knight. And you chose her over the crown. I chose what was right. Aloan closed her eyes. Everything she believed began to crack. Night fell hard and fast. Outside, the storm returned, pounding against the tower like fists. Inside, the fire burned low. Cale shivered even with the cloak around him. Elowen noticed. She moved closer, then stopped. "Will it hurt?" she asked. He knew what she meant. "Yes," he said. She hesitated only a moment before sitting beside him, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. The pain showed on his face immediately. His jaw clenched. His breath shortened. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be," he replied. "Pain reminds me I am still here." She watched him quietly. For a man condemned as a traitor, he held himself with calm dignity. Even chained, he did not bow. "You don't hate me," she said. He looked at her in surprise. "Why would I?" "Because of who I am." He shook his head slowly. "You are not the crown." The words warmed her more than the fire. By dawn, Cale was barely conscious. The curse had weakened him further, reacting to her presence all night. Elowen panicked when his breathing slowed. "Stay with me," she said, gripping his arm. His eyes fluttered open. "You should not care," he murmured. "I do," she said firmly. She pressed her forehead against his shoulder. Something changed. The runes dimmed. Cale gasped, warmth spreading through his chest. Not painful warmth, gentle, steady, hope. He stared at her in disbelief. "What are you?" he whispered. Elowen pulled back, startled. "I don't know," she admitted. Outside, the storm broke. Sunlight touched the ice for the first time in days. Far away in the capital, the king felt it. The magic that bound the throne had shifted. Horns sounded before noon. Elowen heard them first. Her blood ran cold. "They've found us," she said. Cale struggled to sit upright. "Then it ends here." "No," she said quickly. "I will not let them take you." He gave her a sad smile. "You cannot fight the crown." "Watch me," she said. She stepped outside the tower as soldiers approached across the ice. Their armor gleamed. Their faces were hard. "You are ordered to step away," the captain called. "That man belongs to the ice." Elowen stood tall, cloak snapping in the wind. "He belongs to no one," she said. "Least of all you," the captain laughed. "You would choose a traitor over your kingdom." Elowen did not hesitate. "Yes." Behind her, Cale closed his eyes. He knew what that choice would cost her. The soldiers moved forward in a wide line, their boots cutting into the ice. Spears lowered, faces hidden behind cold resolve. Princess Elowen did not step back. The wind pulled at her cloak, trying to drag her away, but she stood firm. The ice beneath her feet shimmered faintly as if listening. The captain raised his hand. "Last warning, Your Highness." Elowen lifted her chin. "If you take one more step," she said, "you stand against the future queen." Murmurs spread through the soldiers. Some hesitated. Others tightened their grip. Behind her, Cale strained against the chains. His breath came short. The curse reacted to the danger, its runes flashing sharply. "Elowen," he said, "you must go." She did not turn. "I won't." "They will not stop," he said. "And they will not forgive." "I know," she replied. The captain's hand fell. The soldiers charged. Everything happened at once. The ice roared. A wall of frozen wind rose between Elowen and the soldiers, throwing them back. Spears skidded across the ground. Men stumbled and fell. Elowen staggered, surprised by her own power. She had not spoken a spell. She had not called the ice. It had come on its own. Cale felt it too. The chains burned not with pain but pressure. The runes twisted, struggling to hold him. "Elowen," he shouted, "the curse is changing." She turned just as the wind dropped. The soldiers rose again, slower now, wary. "You see," the captain yelled. "She is touched by forbidden power." Fear flickered across their faces. Elowen's heart pounded. "I am touched by truth," she said, "and so is he." She ran back to Cale and grabbed the chains. This time they did not resist. One link cracked. Cale cried out as warmth surged through him, sharp and overwhelming. He fell to his knees, gasping. The soldiers froze. The captain stared. "Impossible." Elowen knelt beside Cale. "Can you stand?" "I don't know," he said honestly. She helped him up. His weight leaned heavily against her, but he stood. For the first time since his sentence, Cale stood free of the altar. The chains still bound his wrists, but the ice had released him. They fled as the storm returned. The ice rose and fell behind them, slowing pursuit. Aloin guided Kale toward the mountains, where narrow passes cut through stone and snow. By nightfall, they reached a cave hidden behind a frozen waterfall. Inside, the air was still. Kale collapsed against the wall, exhausted. Aloin knelt and checked his breathing, his pulse. "You should not have done that," he said weakly. "I would do it again," she replied. He watched her by the soft glow of crystal light. Her face was pale, eyes dark with worry. "You risked your crown," he said. She swallowed. "If my crown depends on cruelty, then it is not worth wearing." The words settled deep inside him. Kale had sworn his life to protect the kingdom once. Now the kingdom hunted him, and the woman who would rule it. "Tell me everything," Aloin said quietly. So he did. He told her of the secret council, of fear masked as law, of how her mother had tried to change the winter pact that bound the throne to the spirits, of how Kale had stood between a blade and a queen who believed mercy could save them all. "They said obedience was survival," he said. "Your mother said survival without honor was another kind of death." Aloin's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "She died believing she failed," she whispered. Kale shook his head. "She planted a seed. In you." Days passed in hiding. Kale grew stronger, but the curse did not fade completely. It pulsed whenever danger drew near. Whenever Aloin stepped away, it tightened. They learned each other in quiet moments. She discovered he carved small wooden figures to calm his thoughts. He learned she hummed when afraid, soft and steady. They spoke little of what lay between them, but it filled every silence. One night, as snow fell gently outside the cave, Aloin asked, "What happens if the curse fully breaks?" Kale stared at the fire. "The throne loses its control over the winter spirits." "And you," he hesitated. "I may not survive the breaking." Her breath caught. "Then we won't break it." He turned to her. "Aloin, the kingdom will freeze forever if nothing changes." "Then I will find another way," she said fiercely. He reached out before thinking, stopping just short of touching her hand. "You already are the change," he said softly. They were found at dawn, not by soldiers but by the spirits. The cave filled with cold light as ancient shapes formed from ice and air. Voices echoed without sound. "Chosen daughter," they whispered to Aloin. "Bound knight," they whispered to Kale. The spirits spoke of balance, of sacrifice, of the cost of defiance. "To free one," they warned, "the other must kneel." Aloin stood tall. "I kneel to no injustice." The light flickered. Kale stepped forward. "Then I will." "No," she said. He smiled sadly. "I was meant to stand between you and this fate." He turned to the spirits. "Take me back to the ice. Spare her." Aloin grabbed his arm. "Don't." "I would choose this," he said gently. "Every time." The spirits paused. The ice cracked beneath them, not violently but like a choice being weighed. Before Aloin could speak again, horns echoed from the mountain pass. The army had arrived. Steel glinted through snow. Banners of the crown snapped in the wind. The king himself rode at their head. Aloin stepped forward, heart pounding. Kale felt the curse surge, stronger than ever. This was the moment the kingdom had waited for. The sky above Skeldrath was gray and heavy, like a frozen sea ready to fall. Snow whipped across the plains in sharp waves, cutting the kingdom's army to the bone. At the head of the banners, King Aldrich rode with a face as hard as ice. Behind him, hundreds of soldiers followed, armor glinting faintly in the storm. Princess Aloin stood atop the cliff overlooking the frozen field. Her cloak flapped wildly, her hair whipped across her face. Kale, still chained though stronger than he had been, stood beside her. The chains had weakened, responding to her presence, but had not fully broken. They were still a reminder of danger, of curse, and of the world that would not forgive them. "Your Highness," Kale said quietly, "they will not stop." "I know," she replied. Her voice was firm, though her heart raced like a wild horse. "But I will not leave this ice to remain a grave for you or anyone else." He studied her, gray eyes sharp and steady. "And if they force my death, the curse is tied to me. The ice will follow." She reached out and touched his arm. Then I will face the ice with you. We will not bow. For a moment the wind softened as if hearing her vow. The world itself seemed to pause. Snowflakes hung suspended in the air. Kale felt the runes on his chains pulse gently, and warmth spread from her hand into his arm, then across his chest. The curse recoiled, unsure of itself, sensing the defiance of both the princess and the knight. Then, as if awakened, the ice beneath the army's feet trembled. King Aldrich stopped his horse, staring at the pair atop the cliff. "Alowan," he called, his voice carrying through the storm. "Step down. That man is a traitor. He has no claim to mercy. He has no right to stand before me." "He has the right to live," she shouted back, her voice clear despite the wind. "And so do you to hear the truth." The soldiers murmured. Some glanced nervously at their king. Some glanced at the shimmering ice at the feet of the princess, and Kale, uncertain, afraid. The kingdom had feared this ice for generations, and now it seemed alive in response to her words. Kale stepped forward, letting the weakened chains clink softly. He raised his head and spoke with a voice that carried far across the snow. "I was punished for serving the queen, for refusing to obey orders that would have ended an innocent life. I am not a traitor. I am a knight bound by honor, and I will not kneel to lies." The words struck the soldiers like steel. They faltered, unsure of what to do. The king's jaw tightened. His grip on the reins was strong enough to whiten his knuckles. Alowan's eyes burned with determination. "The crown has been built on fear and falsehood. The winter spirits are no longer bound by lies. They respond to truth. They respond to justice. And they respond to mercy." A low hum rose from the ice. Cracks spread across the frozen field, glowing faintly silver. The soldiers stumbled. Snow lifted like smoke, swirling into ghostly forms. Shapes appeared in the wind, vast, towering figures of ice and light, silent watchers of the world. The spirits of winter had awakened. King Aldrich's face turned pale. "Stop this madness," he roared. "Alowan, return to your place. Leave him to die." "No," she said firmly. "I will not obey a crown that punishes the innocent." Kale stepped beside her. "I would rather die on my own terms than live a lie." The ice trembled violently. The chains around Kale pulsed. The curse surged one last time, reacting to the combination of fear, defiance, and love. The runes flared bright, white-hot against his skin, and then dimmed to soft silver. He fell to his knees for a moment, gasping, and the princess caught him. "Kale," she cried, holding him steady. Her eyes filled with tears, but she did not falter. He looked up at her and smiled faintly. "It is almost over." Together they stood on the edge of a choice, the curse, the throne, and the fate of winter. Alowan raised her hands. "I accept the risk," she said aloud, her voice carrying authority beyond her years. "I will bind myself to truth, to justice, to him. I will stand for what is right." The ice pulsed, the storm hushed, and the spirits of winter leaned closer. The chains around Kale cracked, then shattered completely. The runes dissolved into silver mist, drifting away like smoke in the wind. Kale's breath came steady now. Strength returned to his limbs. The frost melted from his hair and skin. He stood fully for the first time in months, free. The soldiers watched in awe. King Aldrich's eyes widened, disbelief etched on his face. He looked from Kale to Alowan. The ice, once a weapon of punishment, now formed a protective circle around the pair. The spirits of winter bowed, silently acknowledging the courage and truth of the princess. Alowan took a deep breath and stepped forward, hand in Kale's. "This kingdom will not thrive on fear anymore. Lies have no place here. And punishment without justice is a curse greater than ice." A long silence followed. Then the king spoke, voice low and trembling. You defied me." "Yes," she said, "and I will do it again if the kingdom demands injustice, but I will not let fear rule it." The soldiers lowered their weapons, some in relief, some in awe. Even the captain, grim and proud, bowed his head slightly. Kale squeezed Alowan's hand. "You have changed everything." She smiled, tired but resolute. "We have." In the days that followed, the ice melted in places where the curse had once been strongest. The kingdom saw the thaw as a sign of hope, though few understood the truth. Winter remained, but it no longer held the weight of fear. The spirits lingered in subtle ways, a gentle frost in the morning, a whisper of wind across the mountains, a shimmer on the frozen lakes. They were witnesses now, not jailers. Kale recovered fully. No longer chained by magic or punishment, he walked beside Eloan as protector and equal. Their bond, forged in hardship and trust, grew quietly but steadily. Words were not always needed. Small gestures, a shared look, a touch on the shoulder, a hand offered in darkness, spoke louder than any speech. The princess ruled with strength and wisdom. She kept Kale at her side not as a servant but as a partner. The crown became a symbol not of fear but of balance, of justice, mercy, and courage. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Eloan and Kale stood atop the castle walls. The air was crisp but no longer harsh. Snow fell softly, white and quiet. Kale looked at her. "You could have left me on the ice." She shook her head. "I could not. I knew who you truly were, and I knew the crown needed a chance to change." He smiled, faint but full of warmth. "You saved me." She reached out, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "No," she said. "We saved each other." The wind swirled gently around them, carrying with it the faint glow of silver. The ice, once a weapon, now lay silent and waiting. The kingdom had been given a choice, and the choice had been made. Truth, courage, and love had prevailed. Kale took her hand in both of his. "Together, together," she said. The horizon glimmered with the soft light of morning. The storm had passed. Winter would come again as it always did, but it would never be the same. The throne was no longer a place of fear. It was a place of hope. And in that hope, a knight and a princess found something even stronger than survival: trust, redemption, and the promise of a future they would face side by side.